And I want to show you why your fantasy life, the dream woman that you want to be, is possibly the reason why you feel stuck in life and you actually have not become her. So the problem is a lot of people have a fantasy life. They think, oh, I want to make more money. Oh, I want to get my body together. Oh, I want to do all these illustrious things. But you do not realize you have not decided to pick exactly who you want it to be, i.e., you have not picked your identity. And so you often wonder, why do I have a failure to commit? I know I want to get my body together, but it's like I can't figure out how to get my body together. I know I want to make more money, but it's like I can't figure out how I want to make more money. It is because it is all a fantasy. You have not said, I want to pick a specific way I'm going to achieve this thing, because you have the fear of cutting out possibilities. It's kind of like the fear of missing out, FOMO. You tell yourself, I want to make more money, but there's multiple ways to make more money. You can go back to school and become a lawyer. You can become a real estate agent. You can even become a content creator. But if you keep telling yourself, I want to make more money, you're never going to actually pick one, because you're going to have FOMO, because you're always going to say, but what if I become a content creator and then there's a spike in real estate? Or what if I decide to become a real estate agent and then there's a spike in lawyers and lawyers are making all this money? So you never actually commit to anything because you have a fear of cutting out the other possibilities. You have this fear of feeling like, I don't want to miss out on this other life, because you are stuck in a fantasy life. You haven't picked a specific kind of identity, a specific kind of person you want to be. So a problem with this is this fear leads to cutting off possibilities, because you're like, I don't want to pick the wrong thing. I don't want to pick the wrong life. So this leads you to something called the perpetual loading zone. And a lot of times this is what I would think to be your potential. You are literally stuck. Think of yourself being stuck at a bus stop and all these buses are going by and you know you want to leave that bus stop. You don't want to be there no more, but you're like, I don't know what bus to pick. Should I go on this bus? Is going to Main Street. Should I go on this bus? Is going to Granby Street. Should I go on this bus? It's going to Newberry Street. You're so afraid of getting on the wrong bus that you stay at the bus stop. But you sit there and complain, I don't want to be at this bus stop. And I know if I leave this bus stop, there's so many different things out there, but you're afraid of cutting out possibilities, because you know if you pick that bus going to Main Street, you can't go on the bus going to Granby Street or going to Newberry Street. But the problem is you don't realize you already are forced into a choice. Even if you decide to not make a choice yourself, life is going to go on. And as you become an adult, we have choices to make. You're going to have to get a job because you're going to have stuff to pay for. Eventually, that young and a lively spirit that you got is going to start to diminish a little bit because your health is not going to be as good. So eventually, you're going to have to start taking medicine. Eventually, you're going to have to start working a job that you really don't like. Why? Because life goes on. So regardless if you make the choice or not, or the world make the choice for you, you're going to be forced into a choice. This leads to you half-assing it. You half-ass your job, you half-ass a lot of your life, honestly, and you feel very unfulfilled, you feel very unhappy, and you really don't do things to the best of your potential. Why? Because you're like, I don't want to be on this bus. I really didn't want to be on this bus. This bus stinks. This bus is this bus is that. But you had to get on the bus. You had to leave the bus stop. You were forced to make a choice. You were just afraid to cut off the possibilities of making the wrong choice, that you let the world and you let society make the choice for you. And you get so sometimes depressed because this is less than the fantasy. That fantasy, right? That potential to have your body together, to live in a different city, to make more money. You know you want to live in a different city. You just can't pick what city. You know you want to make more money. You just can't pick which way you want to make more money. Because you're afraid of cutting off other possibilities. You're afraid of making the wrong choice. And this leads you to long for your fantasy. So this looks different for different people. Sometimes this causes people to do things that literally make them stop thinking about the life that they missed out on. So maybe sometimes people use things to essentially inebriate them. Maybe they're drinking, smoking, use different things like that. There are some people who do something called maladaptive daydreaming, which they daydream about their fantasy life all day and all night. And I actually have a video on my page about that. If you type in daydreaming, you can find it. about how to deal with that. But essentially, you long for your fantasy life. You long for, going back to what I said in the beginning, you fall in love with your potential. I know if I just committed, I know if I just did this thing, I can change, I can change, I can change, even though you have a failure to commit. Now, this leads to no initiation of activity. You long for a fantasy life so much. You fall in love, if not obsessed with your potential so much so that you never actually do anything because it will get you out of that potential. Because potential is what you do before you do the thing. So as long as you have something to look forward to, as long as you have this mindset of, if I just commit, if I just stay consistent, I know I can do this thing, I know I can do that thing, it makes you feel good. You become obsessed with it even, but you cannot have potential in action. So you have no initiation of activity. You literally do nothing to change your life. You literally, the only action steps you take are the ones, going back to here, that you're forced into. You work a regular job. You do, when your doctor tells you that you need to start taking supplements or medicine, that's when you take it, right? You don't do anything before. When you're forced out of your mom's house, that's when you have to move. You wait until life forces you. Now, the no initiation of activity leads to procrastination. You keep procrastinating. I'll do it later. I have to wait for the perfect time and the perfect moment. And that's when it's going to be perfect, because you're longing for that fantasy. And in your fantasy life, everything is perfect. You have the perfect body. You have the perfect, and you fall so in love with that potential that you have a fear of losing it. So you procrastinate. You say, I'm going to wait until I make a certain amount of money. I'm going to wait until I have a certain kind of job to start doing action steps. And you don't realize this procrastination leads you right back here into the perpetual loading zone. The decision of, which one should I make? Should I go this way? Should I do that thing? Should I do that thing? And you're waiting until you're forced into a choice. And you don't even notice that you've been stuck in this cycle for so long. Every so often you do feel like, maybe I should go back to school. Maybe I should start this business. Maybe I should, but you never do it. You stay in that loading zone until you're forced into a choice. Most people don't get another job until their job fires them. Most people don't start going and worrying about their health until their doctor tells them they have to. There's a lot of people who literally only left their town or their city because there was a natural disaster or something crazy happened, even though for a long time they were saying, I need to leave. I want to leave. I want to leave. And it's all because you're stuck in this fantasy life. And that's why it's so imperative for you to pick the specific identity that you want and commit to that. That's why it's imperative for you to understand, once I decide to stick to this life and commit to this life, I have to cut off the other options. And don't get me wrong, as life goes on, you can change and different things like that, but you have to make a decision, and you have to make that decision without the longing for something else. Oh, I could make more money doing this. You can. There's always more fish in the sea. That's the problem. But you need to understand, if you don't pick a fish, you're always just going to say, there's so many fish in the sea. There's so many fish in the sea. You haven't picked one yet. Well, because maybe if I could pick a catfish. Oh, well, I can pick a flounder. Oh, well, I can pick a red snapper. You haven't decided to pick one because you're so afraid of making the wrong decision that you haven't noticed that you haven't made any decision yet. And that is why you're stuck. And so I wanted to show you guys this framework. I did not create it myself. I actually got it from Dr. K, but I felt like this would be really good to show you guys why it's imperative that you have to literally be able to imagine your dream life. You have to be able to say, this is what it looks like for me. This is where I'm working. This is what I'm doing. This is how I stay healthy. This is how I stay active. Pick it for you, because there's going to be so many choices out there. There's going to be so many options out there for you. And if you keep living in that fantasy and not getting specific on what you want and who you want to be, you're never going to become anything. Or you're just going to become what society wants you to be. So you can pick. Now we are going to get into step 2 of this.